Only gone and fixed the bleeding audio, lads. Get in. Anyway, time for something a little less metal. Pearl Jam's latest album, Lightning Bolt, released through their own label called Monkey Wrench Records. So it was a recent purchase, as I found it relatively cheap on the old eBays. Anyone who has seen my collection video would know that I've actually got some of Pearl Jam's early albums. So I thought, sod it, why the bloody hell not? I'll get this one. So let's have a look at the album art then. So on first glance, it looks quite minimalistic, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing. I love the font. Even though the font is basic, it looks very modern, and I think it looks, pretty nice. One thing I will say, which I absolutely love, it's noticeable on the whole album, but most noticeable here. On these red bits, it almost looks like it's been hand-painted, which is really rustic, and I love it. It looks fantastic. One thing I also love is how the inner, so the little bit that the record itself goes into, also incorporates its own design into the sleeve, which I think, if I take it out, looks pretty good. I'm going to need this in a bit. So that's obviously the inner. Got the white little lightning bolt here. Flip it, and you've got the other one, which looks pretty nice. The colour schemes are brilliant. Again, still, there's not a lot going on colour-wise, but again, I think that kind of lends itself to the minimalistic theme the album's going for, which I really like. So let's have a look on the back. So the one thing you'd immediately notice, which I think is really unique, I've not seen this, at least on any album I own anyway, not saying this has never been done before, but each song has got its own little artwork, and I really like it. I think it's so unique. I mean, this in comparison with all of the other elements, stick them all together, it makes it a very, very memorable album. I mean, for me, I saw this on eBay. I didn't necessarily immediately think it was Pearl Jam, despite the fact it obviously had Pearl Jam written in big bloody letters on the bottom. But, I mean, if you were to see this in the shop, I mean, I'd look at this twice. I really like it. I think it's bloody excellent. Some of the other things that this album also comes with, some stickers, which the more creative amongst you will probably have a use for. I mean, I'm not really into this kind of thing, but again, it goes so consistently with the rest of the album, and it's really, I can't even bloody talk, really bloody pleasing to look at. I stutter so much. I've had to take this scene and do it so many times. It's unbelievably annoying. Doing this hopefully will improve it, but let's see. Anyway, so again, on the back, more stickers. They all look fab. Again, you've got some from the artwork. In fact, I think all of these from the artwork. And then you have the some of the band members up here. Lovely. Lastly, this also comes with a really nicely made booklet, which has got all the artworks and the lyrics and such in it. So again, you've got like a little credits bit here. So we've got Matt Cameron on the drums and percussion, Eddie Vedder on vocal and guitar, Stone Gossard on guitar, Mike McCready on guitar, and Jeff Ament on bass. You see, I really need to talk properly. Anyway. So again, we've got a little contents page here. These are all the songs, and then just a quick flip through, we have lyrics for Getaway here, Mind Your Manners, Father's Son. Where's some of the bloody artwork I literally just saw and now can't find? Bear with me one moment, I am a blithering pissing idiot. There we go. Very nice. Got there in the end. One more thing I would love to add, this is obviously a gatefold sleeve. Here again are all the band members. But the thing that I just want to mention, it feels really bloody well made. Like, it feels very thick. It feels like it could take a little bit of damage. I'm not going to go throw this in the garden or anything, but it feels really high quality, and I love it when you can get one for the price that I paid, and it's really bloody nice. I love it. So far, I've got really high hopes for this album. So, what does the actual vinyl look like? So the answer to that question would be bog standard black. Usually I would go for either a coloured version or a rarer version, but there's a couple of reasons why I didn't do that. One of them I'm going to leave to the end, but the main one is that, to be honest, it kind of goes with the album. And as I said in my Rotting Christ video, I love it when you get a vinyl colour which matches the album. And also, I love, it works very well with the custom labels you've got on here. So you've got side A, and of course, don't drop it, side B upside down, because I'm a blithering moron. So, what do I think of this album then? Well, it's an alternative rock album, very consistent upbeat vibe, at least on side A, and then there's a downbeat vibe on side B, which is obviously very nicely contrasting. Eddie Vedder vocally is a bit like a cheese or a fine wine, really. He just gets better with age. Very clean instruments, nothing overly prominent, or no other instrument overshadows another on the album at any point, which is nice. The bass again is excellent, which I do also think is partly down to the setup I utilise. But again, bass is very good on this album anyway. The song Siren breaks up the tempo and keeps things very unexpected, and is easily the strongest song on the album. Other strong songs on this particular side include the opener Getaway and its neighbour Mind Your Manners, which featured on Guitar Hero Live, fun fact. Siren really highlights how good Eddie Vedder's vocals can be, and the whole dynamic range is showcased here. I'm glad that Siren is the longest song on the album because it is simply the best one. And then Lightning Bolt started playing, and then I realised that all of the songs on this album are generally a very, very high standard, at least on side 8 anyway. Vocally on this particular song, it was by far his strongest and most belty performance, which complements the subtleties of Siren's very nicely. The song Infallible starts off fairly weak in my opinion, but gets better as it plays. In my opinion, I feel the instrumentals are a little bit basic. I'm fairly sure if I was to listen to this for a second time, it would probably grow on me and the opinion will change. If I had to pick a weak song at this stage, I would have said My Father's Son on the basis that it wasn't entirely memorable, and I would have to listen to it multiple times to have it ingrained in my very limited brain capacity. Not to say it's a bad song. As I say, the standard for this particular album is incredibly high, but I would have to listen to it again, so there's that. And then side B starts off playing with a very, very different vibe, nowhere near as upbeat as side A. Pendulum, vocally, is interesting to say the least. The one thing I can already tell, this album is very, very strong vocally, yet it almost turns experimental at this point. For me, I was kind of happy that this song was quite short, because then Swallowed Whole kicks in. And with this comes back that upbeat vibe, which I was slightly scared wouldn't be coming back. The instrumentals in this particular song were really strong, and I feel like this is the first song where you could actually see that the instruments were at the forefront as opposed to Eddie Vedder's very strong vocals. All songs so far except Pendulum and My Father's Son were very catchy and stick in the mind near enough immediately. I wouldn't describe Siren as catchy, but that's not a bad thing. I would kind of describe it as more of a showcase of all the best bits from the band, as well as a checkpoint change in tempo, which was there at the perfect moment to keep things interesting. Sleeping by Myself, which is another song on side B, included another change up with Eddie Vedder on the ukulele, which I have a predisposition to immediately think of as cheesy or a bit of a gimmick, but it works excellent in this particular song. And I was thoroughly impressed with it, and I think it's a stroke of genius, to be honest. If anything, the song was actually shorter than I would have liked. The album, again, changes to a more mellow mood. But this isn't a bad thing, actually. I feel like Sleeping by Myself and Yellow Moon takes the album into a different direction tempo-wise. There was also always a danger on this album that the songs would start to sound a little bit samey, but side B, at the very least, does everything it can to differentiate, which is a very welcome element. The Guitar Heroes... Sorry, let me repeat that again. The guitar solos were present, were of course kick-ass, and are of course required to be by law when there is one present. The most mellow song, Future Days, comes as you'd expect at the very end of the album, and is by far the most mellow song on the album, which obviously is probably best placed at the end, and I feel complements the overall atmosphere of the album nicely. Beautiful acoustic guitar work and violin, and yet again, strong vocal performance by Eddie. I would describe the album overall as a very emotional journey with some bumps along the way. I don't think My Father's Song is a particularly large bump, so to speak. It just isn't very memorable. And then Pendulum was very memorable, but for me it was for the wrong reasons. The vocal harmonies for me were a little bit questionable, and that's what did it for me. But I wholeheartedly respect the decision to try something different from an artistic perspective, but for me it just didn't work in this instance. In terms of the positive, the album starts off very upbeat and incredibly strong. Eddie Vedder's vocals really are the start of the show to be expected. Very unique, recognisable almost immediately. No gripes at all with the instruments whatsoever. Nearly every song is memorable, catchy, and will remain in your head for quite some time. The change in tempo and atmosphere on side B is welcome, but it didn't start off in the strongest possible way with Pendulum, which is a shame, but it does quickly recover with the rest of the entries on this album. All in all, I like it a hell of a lot. I already want to put it on again, and I haven't stopped listening to Siren since I bought it. It's amazing. So in terms of the lyrics, I mean, I'm not an expert in lyrics whatsoever. I'm not an expert in literature or even the English language for that matter. But I find personally the lyrics in his album to be written really, really well. And I find are about Eddie Vedder's thoughts and feelings on predominantly getting older, life and mortality. The key elements I noticed, which may or may not be typical to Pearl Jam's lyrics, are several things, which is storytelling, which you might be able to relate or at least sympathise with, repetition, asking questions within the lyrics. As I said, I'm not an expert in lyrics, and I've really only been looking into things in depth recently, but I get the impression lyrically that it's coming from personal experiences which are presented in a way which appeases to the listener, and I really like that, and it's certainly apparent within this album. So how much did I pay for this then? Just shy of £20, so it's plenty affordable. You can easily find it on your eBay or your Discogs, and when the government say you're allowed to, you could happily go into your HMV or your record store and find this widely available, which is simply great. However, there is one other colour available. This colour is red. And the only way it was possible to get this without paying over the odds for it now is to be lucky enough to be randomly selected if you bought it directly from the band's website. So how much would you have to shell out to buy this particular version? £50? £75? £100? You know, it is a popular album. Try £400 bloody pounds minimum. There is one currently on eBay being shipped from Australia and one on Discogs from Italy, which is closer to £500. Mental, but the plot thickens. This is actually a repressed version of the original Red album release, because the original Red pressing was mispressed and therefore deeply flawed and skipped all the bloody time. If you are mentally fractured and you want to buy a broken bloody vinyl, you can buy that particular version for £200. You have to be more mentally unstable than I am to buy this, but hey ho, it's an option. On that note, I'm going to go throw up and cry in a corner at how expensive it is to collect vinyl. Ta-ta for now.